recording on this computer. All right, let's talk about, we're going to be talking about promises and asynchronous code. Does anybody know what asynchronous code or what synchronous code is?
Asynchronous code is code that knows when to execute itself.
That knows when to execute itself.
It doesn't need to be called on explicitly, maybe.
So you are correct that it knows when to call itself. Like, why does asynchronous code exist? Can anybody tell me?
Because not all the time are we going to know. So some functions are dependent for other functions to run first, and we're not always going to know when that dependent function is going to end. So if we code an asynchronous function, it's going to know when it has the functions before its output that it needs to run, and once it has that, then it'll run as soon as it gets that.
Awesome. Perfect. Exactly. So, and does anybody know, so asynchronous code is code that's executed at some point in the future, or code that's executed at some point in the future is dependent on some previous function's result or something like that. It could be a result. It could just be anything. So a function that is dependent on the value of a previous function. And does anybody have any like real life examples of asynchronous code that we see on a day-to-day basis?
Not a day-to-day, but I would assume some of like the SpaceX type stuff would definitely be.
So at some point, yeah, I guess, at some point a function is executing that determines like GPS as like the rocket boosters falling to the ground. And at some point it reaches a certain, I'm just making this up off the top of my head at this point. At some point it reaches a certain altitude and then it executes another function, or that function returns once it reaches a certain altitude, and then it deploys either the landing legs or the entry burn or whatever. But yeah, that could be one.
Maybe a checksum in a TCP request.
Checksum?
Yeah, like if you make if you're doing like a TCP request, or better example like HTTP. If you do like an HTTP request, at some point when it gets if you do like a post, at some point when you're making a post to a web server, at some point it knows when it's done, and the changes will be committed to that web server.
Exactly.
So when they're written. Perfect.
Yeah, so that's something you probably experience almost every single day, whether when you're on the web, is asynchronous code. So when you go to a website, it dispatches some kind of request, a post request, a get request, and what you see on the screen is waiting for that request to resolve itself to get back whatever data you want, whether it's Facebook, like posts or comments, or if you're on Reddit, like you have to wait back. The web page has to wait until the web request is resolved. So you get those comments back, and then the web page does something like displays the comments or the post. Because if it was all synchronous code, if you send that get request to Reddit to get posts, the same time your React component is rendering at the exactly same time, and there aren't any comments or posts to display, something's gonna break. Like it might break the web page because it's like, hey, like there's nothing to display here. So again, another example is Facebook login. So you log into Facebook, you type in your username, password, click login. It sends a get request or a post request to find that your user. Once that user, the database finds that user, sends that user back, hey, you successfully logged in. It routes you to your homepage, and then what happens? Then it's like, all right, well, now you have to get all your posts that you've posted on your wall or on your Facebook page. So now it makes another GET request to grab all the posts. All right, now it also has to grab all your photos. All right, then it has to do another GET request to grab all your photos. Then it has to maybe do another GET request to get all your comments. So after, and all that can only happen after you've had a successful login. So in the old JavaScript days, there was a way we can do that using something called Ajax, AJAX. Does anybody know what Ajax is?
I think it stands for asynchronous JavaScript and XML.
Exactly. So here is an example of Ajax. This is Jake, this little $sign, it's jQuery. Don't worry, we're not going to go over jQuery in this course. So example, Ajax takes, goes to a GET request to facebook.com. You know, we go to login, we type in our credentials, and we either get a success. So on success, so we've successfully logged in, and then, you know, we execute some code here, either like show the home screen or show the home screen and do other, you know, requests. Or we get an error saying like, hey, you know, your credentials are wrong, you know, reset password, etc. But with this, with Ajax, if we needed to make multiple requests, kind of like how I outlined, like once you log in, you have to grab your posts, you have to grab your comments, you have to grab your photos, you have to grab your wall or whatever. We get something what is called callback hell. So once we log into Facebook, then we have to do a bunch of other stuff. So right here, we on success. So once we log in, we successfully logged in, then we have to make another Ajax request to get all our posts. And then once the post loads, we have to get all the posts photos. Then once we get all the photos, we can get all the statuses, etc. And then comments, and then post all the likes, whether it's a like, a heart, a laughing symbol, whatever. And each one of these Ajax requests has a success and an error function to it. So this is which is called like callback hell. And this code isn't very, you know, doesn't look good, and it's really messy looking. So with that, JavaScript has something called a promise. Promises, think of a promise as exactly just like a promise in real life. So if I promise to return the book to the library at some point in the future. So when I create a promise, so like, hey, I'm going to create a promise, I'm going to promise to return the book to the library. What are the two outcomes of that promise?
Yeah, either return it or you don't.
I either return it or I don't. So I either resolve the promise, like, cool, I've done the promise, I've returned the library book to, or the book to the library, or I don't return it. So with promises, you know, it's either resolved or, you know, or it's rejected. And then so just to back up, so after I return, so I can say like, hey, I promise after I return the book to the library, we'll go out to dinner. So if I don't return the book to the library, it's rejected, we don't go out to dinner. Otherwise, once I do return the book to the library, the promise is resolved, and then I can go on to the next task, which is like, all right, let's go out to dinner. So that's where like asynchronous code. So like, depending on whether I resolve the promise, determines of what action I'm going to do next, such as go out to dinner or get an error because I didn't return the book to the library. Does anybody have any question about like promises? We're going to go over it right now. So promises. So I'm going to just create a function called like Facebook login. And this Facebook login is going to return a promise. Again, a promise is literally just a JavaScript object. It's literally called a promise. And just like you would create a new class in JavaScript saying like new, whatever class name you want to call it, I can return a new promise. And a promise takes in a callback function. And this callback function takes in two methods, which is resolve. So what happens if I resolve this promise, or what happens if I reject this promise? So what happens when it doesn't, when I don't actually resolve it. So for example, I can say, just say like, if let logged in equals true, if logged in, if I log in, I can resolve this promise. So I actually calls this resolve, and this resolve method that is being passed into this promise as an argument, I can just say a message like log in success. So if logged in, great. Else, I can reject it. Logged in failed. So let's see if I can. Does anybody have any questions about
Yeah, Tom,
promises?
how is this different than just a regular if-else statement?
You'll see once I actually start to create other methods.
Okay.
So once I log in, I want to say let like get posts or get photos. Yeah, let's do get photos. Again, this is going to be, and say like return new promise, resolve, reject, and it's pretty much going to be the same thing as here. Let's see, I'm just going to do this, copy that down and say, is this photos? Got photos, success, got photos, failed. So I want to go through and so after I log in, I want to get the photos, and then I want to just keep on, get the posts. So I'm going to do the same thing with get posts.
Hey, Tom, it looks like you have a little typo on resolve.
Yep, I see that. I was wondering where that was. Thank you. Get posts. I'm just going to say posts. Cool. So instead of using that Ajax, let's bring that back here real quick, where I have to do Ajax, Facebook, get posts, get photos, etc., where it's all very nested and it keeps on getting bigger. With promises, I can say like, hey, execute the face FB login. So execute that. And then once that's done, which is going to return this resolve. So this new promise, when I execute it, it's going to return this new promise. Logged in is true. If logged in, so this is true, it's going to resolve it. So logged in success. So this is just an example of anytime I log in, it's automatically going to resolve it as a successful request. So with Facebook login, once it's done, I can do a dot then on it. And the dot then takes in a callback. And what I pass into here in the callback is the response of whatever this Facebook login is, which is going to be this resolve message. So I can say, hey, take in that response. And I'm just going to actually just console log this response initially. I'm going to actually list everything. I'm going to execute this code, and it's going to execute this Facebook login, and then it's going to pass in this resolve message into the response, and then I'm going to console log that response. There we go. It's now we logged in success. Great. But now I want to say get the photos. So after I log the response, I can return get photos. And then let's see this. Everything's going to still work. Log in success. And then once the photos are done, I can do a dot then on that. And whatever, again, I can take in the response here. I'm just going to console log the response again. And the response should be whatever I return from the get photos, which is this resolve, because I'm resolving this promise. I got the photos. Great. So I'm passing that into the response here. So if I run the promises.js, I should get login success. And then I should also get photos success. Let's see if that works. Get photos success. I can keep on chaining these together to dot then. A response. I can console log the response. Then I can also return get posts. And then do dot then, response. And then console log the response. And I can say like return, completed login, log in actions or requests or something like that. And I'm just gonna edit this a little bit more just to make sure, just to kind of show you what it kind of looks like from a syntactical perspective with the dot then. So I execute Facebook login, I get this resolve, and then I do a dot then. So if I run that, get photos. Where does it say undefined? Get posts.
On line 39, I think you have one that's not returning anything.
On line 39. Oh, yeah, whoops. So I got posts. Yeah, sorry. I can even get rid of this entire. There we go. Cool. So that looks a lot better than something like this.
So that's just doing the same thing as that, just cleaner.
Yes.
Okay.
And the reason you can do dot then is just because of the order in which you wrote the functions.
So the dot then, every promise, you can do dot then afterwards. So with a promise, so this Facebook login returns a promise, and with every promise, I can do a dot then off of and execute some other kind of code I want.
So Tom, to follow up on that, like on line 37 where you have return, that promise is going to return a new promise basically and then you're chaining on another dot then to get the result of that promise.
Exactly.
So your line 37, you can put any function in there that returns a promise.
Yes, you can actually put any function in there at all, whatever you want.
But you couldn't chain a dot then if it wasn't going to resolve a promise.
Correct.
Okay.
Actually, you might be able to do a dot then, but you might. Yeah, it's just no. You should still be able to do a dot then off of that, and see what and execute other code on that.
Can you scroll up to the top again to see Facebook login?
Yep.
Okay, so I guess I'm still unclear here. So it looks like get photos is not held within Facebook login, is it?
Nope, they're all totally separate functions.
Okay, so in your dot then, could you put get photos first instead of Facebook login and then return Facebook login?
Yeah, I could do that, but generally speaking, just you'd rather, in the real world when you're logging in, the first thing you're going to do is log in, and then you're going to do different.
Right, but I'm just trying to make sure that the order in which you wrote those functions up there doesn't matter in the order in which you call them.
Correct. Yeah. So I can put get posts down here.
Okay, got it.
as
That's all I was wondering. Thank you.
Oh,
And if you wanted, you could still pass in parameters to those returns in the chain statement, to those return functions.
to
right
here.
there. Yeah.
Yes, but the way this works, you probably won't have access to them inside of. Yeah, I mean you can definitely, but you'd have to
Okay.
do some logic in here.
Got it. Thank you.
And is that let whatever equals true in each function, is that just a placeholder?
Yeah, this is just placeholder. So if I, so now what happens if I get an error? So what if it doesn't resolve? So dot then is when it actually resolves to true, or like when the promise resolves itself. If it rejects itself, at the very end of all my dot thens, I can do dot catch. And this dot catch catches an error, and then console logs, I think it's error. Whoops, what is it? Why is that? It's happening. Dot catch, error. Oh, I think
I think it just needs.
What's
I
that?
think it just needs a semicolon after it.
That doesn't make sense. Wait, I can Google that real quick.
I think you
should
just
be a
need to put
fat
an
error.
anonymous function, Tom.
I was saying
Yeah.
because mine went away when I did that.
Oh, let me see it. Yeah, so that's what I figured it was. Should delete all that. Takes in an error, and just like it. That's the hell is that? And then console log or console error or something. So if I turn this to false, see what happens. Clear down in the screen. See, it immediately jumps down to login failed. Now, if I do true here and then do false for photos, see what this looks like. Login success, got posts success, but got photos failed. So success, or no, where's photos? So I got an error right here.
how does it know that that's a promise? Like an actual, like, is it the new in
Yep.
there? Okay, so the new is what annotates whether it's a promise or not.
Yep. And
Is error dot catch, is that a reserved word?
dot error or catch?
The argument error.
No, it's not. No, you can pass anything in here. Oh. What the hell? Yeah, you can just pass anything in here, but usually you want to kind of describe it as what is actually in fact happening. Like, what is this message? What are we passing in here? And that's the error. And so I'm going to just copy some code over. So I'm just going to replace these functions with some set timeouts. So I've got, the Facebook login returns a new promise again, but in here I have a set timeout. So it's going to resolve after 1500 milliseconds. Photos is going to resolve after 3000 milliseconds or 3 seconds. Get posts is going to resolve after 1 second. And get comments is going to resolve after 900 milliseconds. So if I go ahead and run that again, I'm just console logging the response here. Get rid of that. And now, because I want to simulate how long it might take to get a response back when I, log into Facebook, it might take a second to hit their database, check against my login credentials, and then return a successful response. So if I run this, let's hopefully don't get any errors. All right, we got logged in success. We got the photos, got the posts, and got the comments. So we got all the information in the order that we wanted to. So we logged in to Facebook, and we got the photos, we got the posts, and then we got the comments. All right. Does anybody have any questions about promises, why we use promises now instead of like the dot then versus like this entire thing, the old way of doing it? And the reason why we're kind of covering promises is because of the fetch API, which we use to actually, so fetch API returns a promise. So when we fetch from some URL, we can do a dot then when we get a response back from that URL, such as some JSON or whatever, an array of posts or something like that. So we can do the response and then return, something like some more data or function.
You're saying that's when we're going to use third-party APIs?
Yes.
So
Or not just third-party APIs, but also APIs to your backend, your Django project.
Okay, and the third-party APIs would have pre-built error messages to let you know, like, hey, something failed, something went wrong.
So with a fetch request, you never get an error. You always get a successful response. It just determines what that response is. It's either, hey, like nothing comes back, or you get a 404, or you get a 200, but you always will get a successful response.
Okay.
Back. I just kind of want to show you some other formatting from here. So notice in here, I don't have the response inside of parentheses. So if you're only passing in one argument, you don't, in fat arrow functions, you don't need to include parentheses. And also, if you're immediately returning something. So I'm going to get rid of these console logs. And if I'm immediately going to execute or return something, I can even get rid of these brackets like that and the return statement like so. So this is all just shortening up the code. Because it automatically assumes, hey, I'm going to take the response and do something with it. And if I'm not actually doing anything with this response, I can get rid of it, but I'm just going to keep it here for now. So if I execute this, login success, got the photo success, got post success, and got comment success. So now this is a lot shorter than all of this. All right. Questions? All right.
Would the whole Ajax thing fail if it failed to load one of those things in that huge chain?
I think it would error wherever the actual error message. So wherever in this specific chain.
Yeah, like would it interrupt the rest of it, like at the error, and then just return the error?
Yeah, because so like right here on a success, it would actually execute this one. But if it errors out, it'd have to go all the way down to here and just alert me what something went wrong with statuses. I believe that's how it works. I've actually never used Ajax from scratch before. That's how old it is. All right. Any other questions?